Hello there, and thanks so much for joining me for another video. I'm Erin Eno, and today I just felt like getting back to the basic magic that watercolor has to offer while I do this intuitive flower. We're going to be doing blends and bleeds and blooms and negative painting, you name it. So if you do like this video, please be sure to hit the like button, and also don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. So grab your paints and let's get started. Okay, so today I will be using my Baohong Academy cold press watercolor paper. It is a block and it's, what size is this? 10 by 7, which I find is a little kind of disproportionate. So I've just taped off the top portion here just so I can have a better visual idea of where I want to paint. This is 100% cotton, 140 pound, and like I said, it is a block, so I'm going to be using a fair amount of water on this. So if you're not using a block, be sure to tape your paper down to a board on all 4 sides. Okay, I will be using my Royal Talens Van Gogh paints. I have a jar of water and a paper towel to blot my brushes off of. I also have a couple of tissues for blotting up on the painting. I don't like to use the paper towels because they have patterns printed in them and they show up when you use them on your painting. For brushes today, I have a Princeton Snap flat shader in a size 16, just in case I want to do any kind of scrubbing and lifting. And I will be using all Princeton Neptune brushes today. All round, I have a size 12, 8, and 4. So this is going to be just playtime for me because I really need some playtime for my painting, and we're just going to let the paints do what they do. This is just back to basics where you're just having fun watching the bleeds and whatnot, and that's the plan. Okay, so I've mixed up a few colors that I think I want to use. I just didn't film it because I didn't want to make this video really long. So I'm going to start with just laying down some water. Now I want to make sure that I leave white space because we know we want to pull a flower out of this, and I'm going to try to keep, I don't want like flower and then a big heavy background all around. I'm going to try to keep it to like 3 sides, probably this corner, this corner, this corner. I don't want to completely frame the flower with a heavy background. So I'm going to start with quinacridone rose. And I'm using my size 12 round for this. And I'm just going to start splattering in some paint, keeping in mind that we want to leave white space, okay? And then as this kind of just settles in and does what it's going to do, we will hopefully be able to pick out a flower shape that we want. I think I'll probably just tap in a little bit of yellow. And it's quite wet. I'm using a lot of water. Now I think I will soften these splatters up. So now we'll start tapping in some colors for the backgrounds, okay? And remember, I wanted to do kind of 3 corners, not all the way around. So I'm going to work on this area, and this area. I think that's what I said. Anyway, if that's not what I said, that's how it's going. So that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to go to my, what will I bring in now? Some indigo. Let's bring in some indigo. Indigo is quite highly pigmented, and that's going to help establish where our background is going to go. I think I'm going to switch to a smaller brush very soon. and we'll start putting in some greens. So I'm going to go to my size 8, and I'm just playing around here. Like I said, there was no set plan on this. We're just seeing where it goes. So I'm just going to I'm going to start putting in some greens. If it's not going the way you like it and you think it's starting to get muddy, just go in and tap it up. I just thought that green just didn't quite do what I wanted it to do. So now I'm just doing lines and some squiggles and whatever. This is, did I mention? I've got sap green and a little bit of indigo on my brush right now. Go back in and get, whoops, did not mean to do that. Some yellow ochre. I just like to throw yellow in sometimes when I'm at a loss for what color to go to, because it's not too overbearing when you do put it in. And I'm using yellow ochre because I didn't want anything too extreme and vivid. So that's why I went with that. It's getting a little heavy up here, so I'm going to just take my flat shader, just kind of push some of this up so it's not so vivid. Whoops. Now, we can obviously see that our whoa, that wasn't very smart. So we can see that our flower's in here. So now we're just going to start some negative painting to kind of pull that out, but it's a little wet, so I'm going to let it sit for a while first. I think what I will do though, while that's drying, without going in there and adding more water, I'm going to add some more paint to this indigo and hope that it doesn't bleed in too much. If it does, just go in with a clean, damp brush and just kind of pick up some of that water so it doesn't travel too much. Okay, I do want it to travel down this way, so that's what I'm going to do. And then it's missing a bit of indigo up there now, something heavy. So I'm just going to put a little bit in. Maybe marry that up with some green. Okay, you can do actual leaves if you want. I just want to do like maybe some impressions of leaves, nothing too literal. In fact, I don't even know if I like these guys. Just gonna soften them up a bit. Just like so. Okay, so now it's still a little damp. I don't think I want to go in yet and go at that flower. So we'll let it sit for a little bit. I think what I may do is go in, try to get some blooms out of this, just for a little bit of texture in the background. The indigo is probably too wet to form a bloom, but we'll see what we get down here. They'll continue to grow. Maybe we'll do a couple over here too. While we're waiting, why not? La la la. So this is pretty dry now, so I'm going to go in with my size 4, get some sepia, and just tap a little center stamen in there And now we can pull out some petal shapes. Okay, so I'm going to go in with the quinacridone rose, and I'm just going to tap a little bit in there. That hit the sepia a little more than I wanted it to. Then I'm going to dry this brush off. I'm going to stay with my little brush and just pull some of this out. I've dried my brush off, so I'm almost basically dry brushing this. And I'm just kind of experimenting. A little bit more of the rose. Get a little bit of this rose up here at the edge. I don't want it too heavy, so I'm going to just immediately blend it out. Maybe get a little bit of yellow in there, and I mean a little bit. Okay, so I'm just going to soften that up, just so the flower doesn't look so flat. And then I'm just flicking with a dry brush. Some of this red, or some of the rose out towards the outside. I don't want to get too carried away here, so I want to keep it pretty soft. So now what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to try to clean. Well, that's pretty wet. That's a good thing, because I'm going to try to sharpen up this edge here. So I'm just going to go in with my flat shader and a tissue. Okay, so I'm just going to scrub at this a bit. And tap. So I like how the flower's coming along. I think it's bled a little too much there, so I'm going to see if I can get some of that up as well. I'm just going to start by just scrubbing it away from the flower and then picking it up. Okay, so I'm just kind of pushing it out because this is a pretty stiff brush, so I'm able to do that. And then tap it with my tissue. And I think that's good enough. So now I'm just going to go, I think it needs some more darkness up there, so I'm going to go with my number 8. I'm going to go back into the indigo and just let that go crazy. I didn't think it was still that wet up there, but there you have it. Get some more green. And we just have these petals have these kind of crepey edges. Okay, nothing too contrived. But you know what, there's something bugging me about that. I don't think I like that green. I think I'm gonna take my chances. Go in with my indigo like there's no tomorrow. And I think what I will do is pick my board up, clean my brush off, and coax this down. So I still have the green coming through, but the indigo just kind of marries up the rest of the corners on this painting. Just like that. The last time I did a crazy floral like this, there was a lot of indigo in it as well. I love indigo. Okay, now this didn't lift as well as I wanted because indigo is a pretty vibrant staining color. At least that's what I find. So I'm going to use my little scrubber brush. It's not an official scrubber brush, but it's what I have. And I don't know, I have to be careful because it is a staining color. I don't want to chew my paper up, but I just want to see if I can lift this a bit. Just going to let the water sit on it for a little while. And see what I can do about picking up more of that blue. And that's not going to work. So we're just going to have to live with it, which is okay. So what I want to do to correct that is, because that just looks wonky in there, I'm not happy with it, but I'm going to continue. I do want to cover up this batch of the flower though. So I'm going to go in with the sap green, touch of that indigo, and I'm just going to change the shape of this one. Just like that. I actually like that because it's bleeding out because that was wet. So I actually don't mind that. And I don't think there's anything I can do about that blue. I'm trying to think if there's a color I can put on there to make it look less of an error. And I don't think there is. So I'm just tapping this so it doesn't continue to bleed in, picking up some of that water. I don't want to go at that again, but I don't like it, you guys. I'm going to leave it. I don't want to risk it. So I'm going to go to my number 4 brush. I'm going to pick up the water I just splattered. I'm going to go with my number 4 brush, and we are going to go back into the center of the flower. And I'm just going to tap some of that sepia in there just to darken that up a bit. And I'm going to very carefully dry brush some of this out. And if this gets too heavy, I'm just going to tap it up, just so it's not like really dark brown. Just softening it with some water because it was just too harsh for me. Okay, so that's good. Now I want to separate these petals a little bit, so I'm just going to get some Payne's Gray, a little diluted, and just put a little bit of shadow here where these petals would separate. Just to give it a little bit of dimension. I think I'll mix some of that pink with that too. And I'm just softening one edge of that shadow. And we can afford to have a little bit of a heavier separation on this side. Now, since the flower looks like it's just floating, I'm going to go in with the green, and we're just going to quickly just do some, you know, kind of indications of a stem. I don't want it really literal, so I'm just going to let it bleed out a bit, and maybe even go in with my size 8 and do a leaf, but a rough leaf. Loose, very loose. Remember, I said I didn't want background on this side, so I don't want to have a lot of leaves and a lot of weight down this side. And hopefully that will balance things. Just going to tap a mixture of the indigo and the sap green right up to that. And then I just want to kind of sharpen up this edge up here. I don't mean sharpen, I just mean kind of define. Those blooms didn't really work. I just got a couple of them there, but that's okay. So I'm going in with my size 12 brush now, and I think I want to maybe see if we can draw some pink to that top corner. It may not be what I want at all, but we're about to find out. And I think I will do the same thing. I'm just going to tip my board, clean my brush off, and let this run out. See what that does. I think I could even tap in some yellow there as well. The yellow went a little rogue on me. I'm not sure I like it. I'm going to pick some of that up. And then the pink, that pink is very bright. So I'm just going to go in with a little bit, hopefully this works, a little bit of the Payne's Gray, and just tap some in here. See what happens with that. Because the Payne's Gray has a little bit of blue in it, I'm hoping that it transitions nicely into that pink from the indigo. Other than that, I don't want to go too crazy, but I will go back to the green, maybe a little bit of a more yellow green. So I'm going to leave this just sap green for down here. Then I'm going to go into my yellow ochre and just play around with that a bit. Okay, so I'm kind of happy with that, and it's going to dry lighter. So we've lost our indigo, so I'm going to go back in to the indigo and just darken up some of these edges where it hits the flower. Don't know if I like this stem though. What's going on there? I think I'm going to try to fix that somehow with you guessed it, indigo. Now I'm going to go in with some, actually, you know what? I think I'm going to go in to some burnt sienna. And I'm just going to try to do some stamens just with the tip of my brush. I should be using my liner brush because I'm not getting as fine a line as I want, but I'm not very patient today, I guess. I'll just go slower. There we go. It's still pretty wet, but I do want to get some blooms in there. Hopefully I can get some blooms to work now. This area might be too dry. Well, that one worked. So to get a deliberate bloom, if you don't know, you have to end up putting down more water than what is on your paper, okay? So if your paper's sopping wet, you're really not going to get blooms. It has to be like just starting to dry. And if it's too dry, it won't work. But if it's too dry, you can try wetting it and tapping it up with your paper towel or tissue in this case. So I like that bloom. I don't know if this one's going to work so much, but as it sits, we'll see. So looking at this now, I am not happy with that stem. So I'm going to go in with my sap green, and I'm probably way overworking this now. And I'm just going to do some lines just to kind of distract from that. Just crazy lines. You can also bring it up to define that shape a little more. Okay, there's no rules here, right? So you can do whatever you want. And if you like it in the end, that's awesome. If you don't, hopefully you've had a good time painting, and hopefully you've learned something. So I've learned something. I've learned that I don't like stems on paintings like this. And let's, you know what, just put a little more on that leaf. That implied leaf. And then let's just drag some lines out here. Why not? I think this just kind of ties it together. It may be crazy looking, but I just felt like it wasn't kind of balanced. So actually I don't mind that. I think what I will do is go in and just put a little bit more shape on the petals. Okay, and I don't want to leave it that dark. I'm just going to go in and soften that and pick it up. Okay, so it's just very, very pale. Just to kind of indicate some crinkles in the petals. And I do want to define this guy just a little more. That's the shadow of that petal. Okay, and when you do this, you can just lay it down and then go back in with a clean brush and just soften that edge, so you can keep that shadow as strong or soften it as much as you want. Okay, I just want a little bit more definition here, like that. Okay, just add some depth to these petals. I didn't like the shape of this petal. I'm just rounding it off just a little bit. It bothered me. And again, here we're losing the darkness of that area where I didn't like that blue. So I'm just trying to distract from that a bit. So I want it really dark. I thought by putting blooms in there, it might kind of, you know, funk it up a bit, but it funked it up in a bad way. Very bad way. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave it at that. Give it some time to dry, and I will take it off the block, trim it down to size, and we'll see what we think. So there is our final intuitive flower, dried off the block and trimmed to size. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and that you found it helpful. And if you do give this a try, I always say, if you're on Instagram, please share your work and tag me. I really like to see it. So I want to thank you again so much for joining me. Take care, and I will see you next time.